Well, hello, everyone. My name is Kelsey Mcintosh. I'm the technical director at Ringette Canada. I've been there for 2 years, 2 years coming up next week. So, working in sport, either at the provincial level in Ringette for a number of years back east, or in the last 12 years at national sport organizations. So, very happy to be back with Ringette and to be here tonight with you with Heather. Who we have is one of the top coaching experts in the area of goalie for Canada, and actually Heather, from what I hear, actually probably the world. So you have a vast array of experience, either as a coach locally, provincially, and also with the national team. So I know you're going to go over that. So the way this evening is set up, as I admit some more people, we had such an overwhelming request for this, and we have probably over 250 participants in total sign up. So we've split them into two groups. One is a younger age group, which we're doing this evening, and there's also an older age group. Both recordings, both webinars this evening will be recorded, and we will also share them as a follow-up. If for some reason someone gets bumped off or whatever the case may be. And we will also be tracking, I'll be doing some screenshots of everyone who attends. If you have not in your name, if you have not added your complete name, for instance, myself would be Kelsey Mcintosh. If you have not added your complete name, I ask you to go into your name and edit it, because if you're interested in PD points as a coach, I'll need your full name to make sure we match it up, because again, we have over 250 coaches on the list. I want to make sure we give credit to the proper individuals like yourselves who have attended. So basically, Heather, I'm going to read a bit on yourself, and then we're going to get going, and you can add in a number of anything else that you'd like to add as well as I keep going and admitting more people. So Heather has been 18 years as a goalie instructing experience, but also 21 years playing experience. She was a goalie for Team USA in 2010 at Worlds, NRL champion goalie with the Edmonton Wham. I spent, Heather, probably a nice 10 days with you in Alberta at the Canada Winter Games in 2019 as your head coach for Team Alberta at that nice
cold event. It was very cold.
Yeah, coldest games in 50 years for sure. But also recently, you were a goalie coach and a world champion with the 2019 national junior team. And you're also currently an assistant coach with our senior national team. So I know your resume is a lot longer, but those are kind of some of the highlights and some of the more recent highlights from your great experience. So I'm going to hand it over to you. I know you have a bit of information to share, and then we may also get into a hot stove. We have received a lot of questions, which we have shared with you in advance. I know you'll be touching on some of those. And then also as we go through the evening, we also may open it up to some coaches to unmute themselves and ask the questions. But and we do ask you to use the chat, and I'll try to monitor that as well. And we can go from there. So Heather, take it away.
You betcha. Thank you for those kind words, Kelsey. I appreciate that. I think you gave a really good background description there, and so I won't spend a lot of time on that. What I will say though is that I did start off my coaching career focused on goaltenders, and then over the last couple of years prior to my experience on the junior national team, I really tried to hone in on, I'll say, like Ringette as a whole, and that's where you'll see my experience of coaching Alberta Winter Games, and then as Team Alberta at the past Canada Winter Games. And so I was really trying to broaden my knowledge, my view, and from the specific kind of goalie sense in that way, and then now have kind of come full circle and coming back and really focusing there. And so today I'm also here on behalf of 5 Count Ringette Goalie Instruction. And so I co-own that goaltending business with Keely Brown, and Keely is working on the other webinar that's happening tonight. So really what the little bit of background on 5 Count Ringette Goalie Instruction is, it has been around for about 10 years now. And I can't believe it's been 10 years. It's gone by pretty quick, to be honest. And so over the course of the past 10 years, we've made our way to different areas of the country. We've had goalie specific camps. And probably the most recent time, we've really focused our efforts in Alberta, as well as Ontario, and more of that is probably just more of an ease, I guess, more than anything, or convenience. As instructing and coaching is a side gig, as there is, a full-time job and kids that exist to really, we've done anything from focusing on newbies coming to try the position, all the way to more experienced senior goalie coaching. So and everything in between. And so that will be a little bit of background about 5 count. And so I don't know. I was thinking, Kelsey, maybe right off the bat we start with some questions just to go there. Does that work?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
we can get into it. And I'm actually going to ask probably, we had one come on right away. Someone did not add one into the registration, so I'll ask it now. What rotation, or what is the recommended rotation for young goalies? Switch them every game or play a few games in a row? So it was a question for later, but you asked for one, so let's go with that one, get it done.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know if there's a real hard and fast rule there. And Kelsey, if there's something different that's recommended with the athlete development background that you have, I can throw that over to you, but I could give more my opinion too on it.
Well, we talked about it before we actually opened it up to everyone else coming on. What age group are we talking about right now in this call? It's a younger age group.
You betcha.
And what do you suggest for the younger age group? You may find that diamond in the rough, right? And you were talking a bit about that.
You betcha. And one of the things that I think we've been successful with over the years is, I'll say, dispelling the fear of being a goalie, for example, or I'll use an example. My mother had a hard time coming to watch Ringette at times because of the pressure a goalie feels and whatnot. And so I think in some ways, really what we've tried to do is have all the kids, at a practice be goalie focused, and have all the kids have a goalie stick, or at least practice holding a stick a certain way, and be introduced to the basics and the fundamentals. And so I think if that is incorporated into some of the practices or some of those events, then those players are equipped when it becomes their turn. So just touching on Kelsey's point, is I know we have that U12 and under age group here too. And so with the recommendation to continue to rotate positions and not necessarily specialize, I think from what I'm aware of, I have a 4-year-old, so she's not quite in Ringette yet, but with U12 and below, I think in some ways, from what I know, a lot of people do the one game where everyone takes a turn. However, with seeing some of the skills and the development, and seeing some of the progression, in some ways, maybe, being able to have a back-to-back or more of a sequence of events, that I could see an advantage to that too, because I think, like anything, it's what I try to do is relate goaltending to any other position. There just happens to be one of them on some of the senior teams, or two, but you have 6 or 7 forwards. So to kind of apply that same thinking, that a forward or a defenseman gets multiple opportunities to practice in a situation, and so in some ways, if you can create that same experience for someone who's practicing in that position, then that would probably be the approach that I would recommend and I would take.
Sounds good. Something we talked about also before we come on the call is some coaches may think that you have the most amazing drill for a coach. The purpose of this evening is not for you to get on a whiteboard. It's more of a conversation piece. But would you have any areas or location suggestions for some coaches if they want more in the line of drills or activities for goalies? Who could they reach out to, or where could they go for that information?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I know right now too, like I am a big fan of the Google, and there's a lot of Ringette resources out there. I know I've gone to let's say even the Ringette retreat, and I'm not plugging or anything like that. These are more just resources that I'm aware of. I also personally tend to go through any sort of any drills really that are available on the internet, and modify them. And I know the response from the group, I know you can't talk to me here, but you probably like, what do you mean? I don't know anything about goaltenders. And what I would focus on for this age group, or these age groups, is more about movement and skills, and can the player do a T push and do a shuffle, and know what a C cut is and know when to use them, right? And so when you're looking at movements, or movement drills, and even if you Google, goalie movement drills, you'll see ones that will come up. You'll see all the letters: a Y drill, an X drill, a box drill. You'll see all of those come up. I think even Hockey Canada has a lot of those resources published as well. And so if you are going to tune in onto the older chat, you'll see that there's some questions about the differences between hockey and ringette. So tune into that. I would recommend it. But I'd say some of those movements are very similar, and those patterns are similar. Because what I would say is, when you're then graduating from U14 to U16, now it becomes the sequence of movements. So if I'm U12 and under, it's I can do a T push. I know the technique of doing a T push. And for those of you who don't know what a T push, it's when I'm, you can't see me, but I'm holding my hands in my goalie positioning, and I'm turning my one leg out as a hip at the hip, sorry, and then pushing for a longer distance. And then a shuffle where I'm tracking. And so tracking the ring as someone's skating across the top of the triangle, for example. And so at these age groups, I really would stress the importance of movement, understanding, and it doesn't hurt for goalies to be even participating or taking part in some of the skating drills, right? Especially at this age, where maybe they're playing a couple games in goal, but then the next game they are a player again, or you actually can even modify some of the existing skating drills that you do use to provide a goalie element. And I'm expanding on your question, Kelsey, so I'm just going to keep going if that's
Yes,
okay.
yeah, go, yeah.
I'll use an example that most coaches probably do the circle drills with their team. So practicing crossovers, for example, and going around the circles and doing that. You could have a rep or a couple of reps of your goaltenders using C cuts to go around, right? So just so that they're still practicing that skill and the technique part, and incorporating, I call it the zigzag drill, but there may be a more formal name or better name than that, but skating from kind of the boards by the goal line, and then skating up. I guess you either go cross ice or half ice anyways, but you could be shuffling or T pushing and doing those movements. And where this really became apparent to me, I was doing some evaluating this past weekend, and I evaluated from U12 all the way to U19. And so it was interesting to see what I really zeroed in on the U12 and under, or U12 age group, was really about, can I, do I understand the goalie stance? Can I do my movement? Do I understand, I call it, so you'll have a little bit of my own lingo here, but I call it crease management. So it's how do I track and move in the net? And so I would watch some of that for the younger age group. But then as I was looking at the older age groups is when you would see the sequencing of the movement being important. And what I mean by that is, when I'm tracking the play, I might be, using a C cut to push out from my post, and then shuffle and tracking the ring, and then the ring comes back to the low post, and now I might do a T push. So then I carry a little bit more of that sequencing. So just trying to my point of that is more that I'm just trying to differentiate the differences of the skills as the goalies develop and grow in the game.
What can a goalie do off the ice to get ready to move when they step on the ice, even at a younger age group? Maybe what's a couple of tips? What can a
Yeah.
goalie do off the ice to get ready to move on the ice?
And you're talking more about like when I focused on those movements
Yeah.
and I should preface this too. I know I really focused on the movement part, but really at the end of the day, the job of the goalie is to stop the ring too. So while I focus on the skill perspective, sometimes, or the movement perspective, sometimes I think the art of goaltending sometimes is a little bit, sometimes like a goal scorer's touch in a way, right? Like in some ways there is some natural abilities too, and I think some of those are just to fine tune. To be honest, to be able to get going on the warm up piece is a little bit of those of an active warm up. You often see players players. I was going to say kids, but players just really going for a little bit of a jog, doing high knees for a short distance, or even um, like where you kick your butt when you're going to. And another thing though for goalies, I would say, or I would encourage for that, just getting warm and ready to go is some of those lateral movements as well. So I think you've seen, or maybe you haven't seen, but those agility ladders, or even if you don't have an agility ladder, you can still move laterally, do crossovers, different things like that. So there's a lot of things you can do that you don't necessarily need equipment for. So that you can do with just a pair of running shoes and gym clothes.
And the other piece, if we're talking on the multi-sport side, the more activity, this year may be a bit different with cohorts and depending where you live in the country and whether you can participate in more than one sport or not at this point in time. But if hopefully once we get past this and kids can do multiple sport at the same time across this country, promoting the multi-sport is very important, not to specialize at this young age group. Playing your different positions in your sport, playing other sports, they're really going to help each other as well. And I think that's an important piece to add from the multi-sport standpoint. I guess, what is something that you wish you knew starting out coaching after you turn into a coach from a more competitive player? What is something that just kind of like an aha? It might have been year 2, year 5, but maybe something to help some of these coaches who are maybe in year 2 or year 5.
I think the thing for me, and especially related to goaltenders, right? That's kind of the
Yes,
focus or the niche.
correct.
I think for me is that, and maybe sometimes in anything, when there's something you don't know about it, it becomes scary or unknown, right? And I think the thing, as I started to learn more about other positions or strategies or different things like that, is that a goaltender is just like any other player on your team. And what I would say by that is I alluded to a little bit earlier, except you might have 6 forwards, 60, there's kind of the multiple piece on it. But when you're looking at your drills or planning practice, that you would think of kind of their role in the drill no different than you would of the defensive objective, or if there was or an offensive objective, or just the overall objective of the drill. And so I think it's that piece, that it's like they're not this scary thing that need to be fed or super high maintenance in that sense. And I think coaches can create that part, but I think it's really important to create them, or to treat them as part of the team in that way, and not to create some of that isolation, I guess, or that part. I think that's the part that I've learned, and I can use, and maybe I'll use a general example, I guess, so to speak, just to not put anyone on the spot, but and you probably could connect the dots, but even recently, right? We were at a training camp, and there was a specific objective on offense how the offense needed to execute in front of the goaltender, right? And it was a great drill for the offense. And it was the first drill that the goaltender faced getting shots. And it wasn't, I'll say, it wasn't a warm-up drill. It was a 3-on-0 pretty much. And so even just thinking of the practice of kind of the first drill coming onto the ice and just being able to either sequence the drills or even just think of all the aspects on the ice and don't get me wrong, I know that you can't find an objective you may not be able, maybe not can, but may not be able to find a specific objective according to the drill, but you could probably give the goalie, as an example, something to work on. So in this specific example, we were really working on patience. And even though there was a 3-on-0, we were really focusing on certain things that way. And then on subsequent practices, I'll get to my point, I promise, is that we put a warm-up drill prior to that. So then the goalie was able to perform a little bit easier, I guess, in not easier, but be able to perform, I guess, in that example.
Oh, that's good. What just came into the chat, it actually came from Lynn, who's borrowing her daughter's login. So Lynn, I have you for your name, which is great. But she asked, how do you measure what size pads are appropriate for your goalie?
Well, that's a great question. And I will admit that I am no expert on kind of that equipment piece and that part. So I realize you may not get a specific answer for me, but I would refer to your goalie specialist. I know here in Alberta we have a source for sports, or there are resources. I have a resource I pulled up on my other screen, but there are the resources out there about measuring from your instep to your knee, and then from your knee upwards too, of the certain height that you would have for pads. So I thank you for that question, but I would recommend that you go to one of your goalie specialists who specializes in equipment.
Super. We actually have a hand up. I believe it's from Bronwyn. Bronwyn, if you want to take yourself off mute.
Okay.
Hey, Bronwyn.
So one of the things, I'm a learning facilitator in Alberta, and so I teach the younger level coaching courses, and there's always a ton of questions about goalies, and I don't know nearly enough. And so one of the things that we kind of talk about is trying not to isolate one kid being in goal, because one of the things, and lots of kids are different, but a lot of the kids, what they want is they want to feel part of that team. So when you're telling your goalie, oh, just go wait by the net, or even if it's less conscious than that, but having them standing alone probably isn't going to help encourage them to continue to play. But the other problem is that when I recommend dressing 2 goalies for practice, even at U10, a lot of associations and a lot of teams don't have the equipment. So my long-winded question is, how much do you feel that, like, for example, especially a U10 athlete, how much of a feel can they get for playing in goal if all you give them is a goal stick? Like to track the movements, to keep their stick on the ice without all the rest of the pads? Can they still get can they then have 2 little goalie buddies practicing? They don't feel quite as isolated, or do you feel that they really need all the equipment to get a good feel for it?
Thanks, Bronwyn. That's a great question, and I'm surprised that you are at a loss for some goalie skills after your experience playing goal. I played ball hockey with Bronwyn, and she was our goalie. So, anyways, thanks for that question. It was great. Here's my thinking, and here's my from experience of what has happened or what we've done in the past is with our 5-count camp, we have run what we call as come try sessions, and really what we've done is we've put all the kids on the ice. Some have had equipment, some haven't, because as Bronwyn had alluded to, the reality is not everyone, you don't have 13 sets of goalie equipment. And so we've had anywhere from, we've collected the amount, to get the most amount of sticks that we could get. But even then, we've even still held Ringette sticks in that sense of getting that stance, because a goalie stance is different than a player stance, right? So Bronwyn, to your point or your recommendation / long-winded question there, with that, I think that's a great idea. And when you were going through there or originally talking about the isolation piece, the logical thing in my head was like, why can't a couple of kids be in that spot so they're not necessarily alone? But I don't think that it needs to have that full goalie experience of goalie equipment. I would be a little maybe aware of the shots, maybe, because some kids I have seen, even U10s, have rockets there and can shoot that ring. So maybe that part from the protection piece, I would maybe just be a little bit aware of if you have kids who don't necessarily have equipment, then maybe it's more shots on the ice or different things like that. But for me, for those age groups, it's about understanding the crease. I know I've said it, crease management, about how I move in the crease and how I track the ring, and then understanding of how where I stand in the net, what does that mean, and how does that show up to a shooter, and in the same way of, I've often said to shooters, it's not necessarily what your eyes can see, it's what your stick can see. So then to flip it from the goalie perspective, it's what can the ring see on the end of that stick of how you would position, for example. So I hope I answered your question there, Broman. We can go to the next one. There's some great questions coming in. I've seen them pop up. I'm excited to answer them.
Well, here, I'm going to go with one that we actually sent, I think last evening when we were talking on getting ready for today. It's a two-parter from this coach.
Okay.
Are traditional soft pads or newer, harder pads preferred for Ringette? That's the first question.
I was going to mention to this one. I was like, I'm actually not sure. I asked, Keely and I were talking through some of these questions last night, and I was just like, oh, I'm not sure again.
That's
I
fair.
would probably refer it to your goalie specialist. I would imagine some of it would be of how the puck or the ring would come off the pad. I would imagine for that rebound piece,
Rebound
right?
control.
But even and this is the discussion that I had even prior to this call with my husband as I was prepping. There are a lot of similarities between ringette and hockey, but there are some fundamental differences, right? Like we stop the ring, there are some movements that are the same, but there are just some differences in the game of even focuses on rebounds and different things like that. So there just are some nuances that way.
Yeah. Well, one thing we could do for that question is when we do send out our follow-up, we may send a follow-up tomorrow, but when we send a follow-up, if we have an answer, maybe we can add it into that. So, I can touch base with Steph if you and Keely chat again.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just someone's opinion. Maybe there's no real answer yet. And I think one thing you mentioned is the control of the ring. And what that player is comfortable with. And if they can control and do what they want, whether they're soft or hard, that might be an easy answer. But maybe we can follow up with that.
Do some research. How about that? We'll get back to you on that one.
Nice political answer. Here's one. It's more helping out the association. If the association is providing goalie gear, what should we be looking for in a blocker? Because there's a few different types. Like, what do you suggest for a blocker if the association was providing gear?
And just so I'm clear, it's a blocker, not necessarily the glove hand. It's strictly a blocker?
Yeah, here it says blocker. I don't know what coach it's from right now, but there's 250 plus coaches on this list. So, but let's go with the blocker, and then maybe if you want to add the glove hand as well.
Sure. I just I'm trying to utilize here my second screen here to just Google off the bat if there is multiple different blockers available, as I'm not, I know there's different brands or different things that way. So from what I would say though, maybe from just the equipment piece, is that I think it's important to have maybe the appropriate size equipment. And what I say by that is I often see like a 14-year-old in senior equipment and they have the brand new, pads, big bulky pads that they can't necessarily move in. They're up to their hips, for example. And so from that part, I think from an association, I know you kind of darned if you do and darned if you don't, because kids are different sizes. But on that part, I would just make sure that it's in some areas it's not necessarily because the age group we're talking about here is U12 and under, that it's more, sorry, I got distracted by the chat, that it's more of the appropriate age equipment. Because again, as I had mentioned earlier, I think a really important thing other than stopping the ring is that ability to move. And so unless, and I may not be fully aware, I don't think there's any Ringette branded blockers, but if there are people who are aware of that, please let me know. I'm happy to learn too, as I have experience, but I'm not a know-it-all in that sense. But I'm going to flip it to the glove, if that's okay then.
Yeah.
For that part. And to be honest, I started my career with a hockey trapper. I was able to throw and be able to distribute the ring. A really important part of a goaltender's role is that, you know, quarterbacking of the transition or starting the transition. So I think for me, it's my answer to that would be preference. For myself, when the Keeley glove came out, I switched to it. And the reason I switched to it is I actually don't have a fast twitch kind of quick glove hand. I wish I did. I wish I could do those cool things, but my stuff was much boring, and it was a lot more about being in position. And so I had found from my own experience that the Keeley glove, I could be in position and I could have my more that target there, and it would cover that space for me, because I had a hard time getting that movement or quick enough. And I know I'm sitting down, but what you don't realize is I'm also not very big. I'm probably, I say I'm 5'2", but I'm probably barely 5'2". And so just for me, the more that I could be square and have that positioning was beneficial for me. I think there is, like anything, it is a bit of a preference. But I think there's two things. One, you have to stop the ring, like first and foremost, and then two, the next part is being able to be comfortable in that transition and getting that ring out. So the one thing I will say though, sorry to really go long-winded on this answer, one thing that I notice about, oh, I see a link there. NAMI might have, if that is it, the NAMI senior blocker, I have one of those, and even though if it's NAMI Ringette, I don't know if there's that many structural differences, I guess, to that piece. Sorry, but I digress. The one thing about the Keeley glove, for those of you who have youngsters that use it, what I do notice is the placement of the glove. A lot of kids are often, I don't know if you can see my hand, but they point it this way in their stance, and so often they're either like this or it's really tucked in. And so when you're doing drills or different things like that, you see that movement. And so what I always try to recommend for people is to kind of put your elbow down, and now your glove becomes that target, and now you can hold it in that stance. So for anyone who has a Keeley glove and you're noticing that, that's one little thing that I've really observed over the last couple of years. Maybe this is a shameless self promotion or a plug, but there is a new version of the Keeley that will be coming out that is a little bit more flexible in that wrist piece. So maybe that could be a part of it, so that you should be able to get that positioning a little bit better.
One thing you mentioned that I kind of clued in on is the fast twitch muscles. You needed some help with that, and later in your career, having that glove, having it taking up space, kind of helped you getting in position. So I kind of, my own question, I guess, is athletic ability of a goalie compared to goalie smarts. So it seems like you said your stature, as I know you, was not very tall, and so you need to fill up the net more for that up at the top. So you used your brain. You had to really make sure you were in position and focus on that. So you took one of, someone could say, a limitation, and almost made it one of your strengths. In making your position your key, like what you were known for was being in position to make the stop when I need to, because ultimately you have to make the stop. So I just kind of throw that out there as I move into the next question. It's a butterfly technique. How much butterfly technique should be promoted to aid coaches for the younger ages, if any?
Yeah, no, and in our camps, we do teach butterfly. It is a way to make a save. What I would caution, I've seen younger kids too. They come in and their first way to play goal or make the stop is they collapse, right? And I think that's all part of learning. And I think it is, you know, a common style. It is a way to make a save. What I would caution at sometimes, the way that I always frame it is that it is an option for you to make the save, or there is, you know, to be able to describe when to use it, when maybe even just standing up might be a better option. And part of that is because ringette goalies aren't usually very big. There are the exception. I know there is that, and especially at the, you know, U10s, U12s, and you see the and the kids have access to the Ringettes. And so if I'm in my butterfly all the time, I will say all the time, then there is that just that risk, I guess, that, you know, kids even at that age are smart enough that goalie goes down, I'm going to shoot the ring in the top corner. So I think there's that element of, yes, teach it, it's a skill. There definitely is a time and a place to use it, but it's not necessarily the only move that you can have as in your toolkit.
Cool. You want to do some rapid fire?
Oh, okay.
Okay, take a drink, take a little break. Let's do
Okay.
rapid fire. There's a lot of good questions, and I still have quite a few on my second screen here as
Okay.
well. So, okay, let's do a few minutes of this, have some fun. Goalie stick. Should we cut it?
No. Do you want me to elaborate, or are you going to fire another question? Okay.
Okay. I would ask, okay, why not?
Well, I haven't, not from experience, but more through like other goalie professionals, is that it puts the balance off, or like the kind of the whole piece off, right? So thanks, Brian. You're a good friend, a good backup, but that it kind of throws off the whole lie of the stick in that sense.
Exactly. Okay. What age do people usually realize goalie is something that they want to do? The girls are U10 teams, still want to score goals, or at least most of the time. They'd rather score than stop them. So what do you suggest is a nice age group to start focusing around it?
Well, if my Ringette Canada hat on,
Yeah.
it's probably after U10, U12, like in that sense to specialize. But in all honesty and in all truth, there are some kids who have a natural tendency to, anyways, and even from what I know, even of what teams do, and what I think you know is a normal thing to do. And please feel free, if it's, call me out if it's not normal, but if there are those kids when you are in U12 and in those levels, that they have that natural tendency and that passion to maybe they have an extra rotation, or they have, you know, maybe a few extra rounds in that piece, right? For myself, I was a big street hockey buff and had, you know, street hockey pads and played goal then. And I was a little bit of a late bloomer when it came to Ringette. I started when I was 10. And so at the time, I guess that is U12. And I played out before before all of the athlete development piece and the science came into play. And for me, it was just a natural fit of being a goalie. I think we used to lose 25-1, and I was like, oh, I could be better. I can play goal. I did that playing street hockey, and we only lost 10-1. So that was the start to my career, I guess.
Sounds good. Let's talk about power skating. A coach's team is going through power skating, and they're asking about the goalie. Having the goalie go through power skating obviously is a good idea, but should they wear their goalie skates or regular skates?
I would say, see, this is, you guys, people are like, oh, you're in HR. I have an HR background. So when I say it depends, you guys, all you people who work in business are probably like, oh, I hate when HR people do that. And to be honest, I think with what I know of with the question, without going into too many details of the situation, I think if it is of the U10s, U12s, and it's focusing on some of the fundamental skating aspects, then I probably would recommend no pads. However, depending on your power skating, I wonder if they are able to offer some goalie specific skating or whatnot. My view, without being like a power skating coach or anything like that, is at these ages, it's about them being on their skates. It's about them being comfortable with edges, or being comfortable of just having that balance and that stance. And I know in the chat, I'd seen a question come up about goalie skates even. And
so what would you have? Would you have the goalie skates on, or regular player skates?
I think for this age group, I would have opinion, would have them in their player skates. I think you could probably work on some of the goalie skating stuff at some of the practices. And the only reason I say that is just after, I've been playing out more recently, and I've had to, and I think there's one time I forgot my goalie skates and I had to wear player skates as a practice. And it is different with the rockers and just kind of the balance piece. And so, yeah, it is. I would, that was where I would probably lean, is to wear your player skates and participate in some of the player power skating if there is no option. And part of that is, I think, is just that skating is a fundamental skill.
So let's go back to the blocker, your hands, what you wear in your hands, blocker, trapper, whatever, heel glove, whatever you're using. Some of these are a bit thin. Some of the players might find, some of the players, you said, can shoot the ring quite hard at that young age group. They may find it a bit hard on their hands. May hurt a bit. Is there any suggestion you could have, what could cushion it, maybe a different technique or something like that?
Yeah, it's funny, right? I've used a Keeley probably, a long time now. When it first came out, how about I say that? I don't even know when it came out. And to be honest, the amount of times, and I think I'm just lucky in that sense, the amount of times that I've had a stinger or that it's really hurt my hand, I probably can count on one hand. However, I know that exists, and that it does happen. I know I've seen kids at camp, they wear actually another glove under it to be able to, get some padding, maybe that would help there. The newer version, not saying that, I know realize resources are slim for associations and totally realize that. But the newer version actually has taken that feedback into account, the second version, and actually has enhanced padding. But what I've seen a lot of is more of that extra kind of glove or pad underneath the Keeley glove.
Okay. Well, that's great. Just a couple more into the rapid fire here. So we're talking about U12 girls, U12 team. What would be the best drill to use for a 2-minute warm-up before the game starts? Because your warm-up is meant to get players movement, get them going, but also let the goalie feel the ring.
Yeah, so and this I know is probably more of a preference than anything, and I'll probably link this to even just any shooting drill. For me, or one of my preferences, or when I've asked my goalies, is one that it's like I have players coming in. I always refer to one as like the 3 lines, and the reason why I like that drill or another one was long short is because I liked having the shot coming from the outside, but then having to move. So 3 lines where you have the 3 lines at the red line coming in, and they have a pass over the blue line, and you get one shot from the outside angle, one shot from the middle, and then another shot from another outside angle. It's very simple, but I like the ability to have to be able to track the play,
Tracking a position and move. Yeah. And get reset up. No, that's great. There's a couple other questions that have been submitted, or some others in here. We may not get to all of them, and I apologize now because I'm trying to look at the time.
We can answer them though, right? I can answer them if you want for the follow-up.
Yeah. There might be a few. You have them, and we're going to keep this chat as well, and we can do some follow-up. Some of them are more specific. So, for instance, does RO, I'm assuming Stephanie, that may be Ringette, Ontario, have contacts within the region for associations to hire goalie clinics? I suggest if you do have any questions for your local association or your region, first go to your local association. You can go to a region if that's what you have in your province. Some provinces don't have regions. They go right to the provincial office. There's a technical person in every provincial office. I know them all. They're great. All 9 of them are phenomenal. Some provinces have more than one who can help out as well. If you don't know who to ask, you could always go to the provincial office and they could try to help you line up. But first, I would start with your local association. I guess my question, I'm going to rephrase this. Let's say I'm coaching a team and I don't have someone like you on my team that knows what to do between the pipes, right? What can I do as a coaching staff to add on to our coaching resources if we're not servicing the goalie, even at a younger age group?
Yeah, and I thought that a question like that might come, right? Because I know that a lot of people have a goalie coach or a designated resource in that sense. And really, one of the thoughts that I was thinking of is there other goalies in the association. Perhaps you could reach out to your U10. That hopefully there are even U14, U6. Maybe I'll start U16, U16 and up that are part of your association that. That would be able to share some of their knowledge. I know we've had some goalies. I think they've been about U16 who started to junior instruct with us, and they do know, they're knowledgeable and they can at least share their experience. And I think one of the I'll say successes, and maybe this will be a little, I guess maybe I don't know, being of our camps is that. Having the all goalie camps kind of helps create that community feeling too. And so I would encourage you to just leverage some of the experience that is within your association and go to those resources.
And I'd like to add in as well, when you're looking at that older goalie to come down and help a younger team, you can also turn it to a positive to the older goalie. A lot of them need hours, volunteer hours for high school. I know I've utilized that in a couple of sports. So I'm involved in 3 other sports as a volunteer. And we've taken some older players down to a younger age group and they've taken a specialty, whether it's a catcher or a goalie or something else like that. And again, some of those school things, hours, volunteer hours, 30 hours for a whole semester for some high school students, they can get it by doing something they love and getting on the ice and helping out the young kids. One thing that there have been a few questions about COVID and what we can do, because we're only allowed so many coaches on the ice, and therefore we may not have that goalie coach able to get on the ice because we're only allowed 2. And there's a lot of questions that may not be able to be answered this evening. There's a few different reasons. One of the main reasons is there's 9 provincial offices. Right now, we're trying to represent them all. There's not one answer that fits them all. If you were to look at all the return to Ringette protocols or documents that they have on their individual websites, they're following the directive of the provincial government where they live. So what's happening in one province may be a bit different. I suggest if you have any questions or anything specific to COVID-19, to please reach out to your local association or your provincial office, and they may be better suited to answer that. So Heather, that's not for you, that's maybe just for the other coaches in line to help answer some of those other questions. I suggest we need to reach out. It may take some time because everyone's quite busy right now, but you can definitely reach out on email. A lot of them also have frequently asked questions on their websites, and some of them have done some town halls as well. So some of the answers may already be on their websites. This year is a very different year because of COVID-19 that we're all experiencing right now. It may not be what we're used to, but I think everyone, especially at the provincial office, is trying to do the best we can to have blades on the ice and to have games and do whatever we can to have games. One thing here from Heather, you're going to add something?
Oh, I was just going to say, am I allowed to say this about if you have goalie specific questions to, please feel free to email me at heather@ringettegoalies.com. Am I allowed to say that?
Well, why don't you say it again just so someone can write it down?
Yeah. So my email is Heather, HEATHER, thanks Brownman, @ringettegoalies.com. And so if you have some of those specific questions, we also have contacts across the country too that we may be able to connect to. So
yeah,
again, but with the caveat that COVID is
maybe a bit
different or whatnot for this year.
Yeah. And there's one last one here. I'm just going to read it. My apologies. And Bronwyn is actually one of those provincial staff. That's why Heather and I both know her quite well. So, oh, someone else came in. A lot of associations struggle to encourage encourage players to try goalie. Some parents don't want their kid to play. Maybe it's going to be too expensive, whatever. What are some ways you can encourage or suggest to motivate kids, how we can make it fun and let them try it?
Yeah, and I spoke a little bit to it earlier, and I can try to expand a little bit too. And I think part of it is just having fun with it. And I know it's probably easier to say from me being like, oh, how can you, how goalie, what fun? But it's no different of you're teaching checking, and you have a, I don't know if everyone knows this game, but my assumption is, but sharks and fishes, fishies, and checking the ring. But there's fun ways to be able to relate being a goaltender, and to have the kids connect with it too. I think when I talk about being in the crease, for example, and often there's the blue part, the hockey crease, and then the white ringette crease, right? And trying to relate it to kids of, okay, where do you want to stand? Do you want to be drowning in the ocean and kind of deep in your net, or do you want to be out on the beach and sun tanning, or not necessarily on the beach, but kind of in that shallow area playing, right? And so I think it's more being able to connect the position no different than you would of a forward or a defenseman. And even I'll use an example of active start. Keely, as I mentioned, who's on the other webinar, has her daughter started active start last year, and I think they took the approach that when they would have certain practices, it was maybe an all goalie practice, or all the kids would try, and they all went through the different basics, I'll say, so that it wasn't just one kid who had to do it at a time. And then it became exciting that everyone was doing it, and it was fun. And she was telling me last night that the whole team wanted to be goaltenders. And I'll say often when we've done group practices like that, where everyone had to go through and have that same experience, the energy leaving that ice, or the kids are pretty pumped and can't wait till they get for their turn, for example. So I think that that group piece, that community piece, that non-isolating piece is really important.
A question that I've done in the past is a specialty like goaltending. Do you find that some associations may rent the ice and have it for goalies only, especially at the beginning of a year, and have someone come in to give all players a bit of fundamentals, that the whole association has a bit of standard methodology to goaltending, and then also the coaches are present who can then take that learning, even though they may not have the skill set or the knowledge in that area, but they can at least take some of the basics and work that through. Have you heard of that much throughout the country or in your region where you live?
Yeah, I'm probably I know we have maybe I have my experience is in Alberta right now, just because it's easy to be there, because I live here, and that it's more I know people, for example, some of the questions they hear are like, hey, can you send us some written drills? Can you do that? And we don't do that part, but what we do often in I'll say the Edmonton region is we actually partner with an association, and so they'll reserve spots for their goaltenders, and then we'll open it up because ice is expensive. There's we can have stations on the ice to be able to do that. This was pre-COVID, and then what we often did though was invite the coach to come on the ice, so they can observe, they can hear the instruction or the comments or different things like that. So that's the approach that we take is, hey, we have goalie specific sessions. We encourage, if we partner with I'll say Edmonton Ringette Association, then have your coaches come out. We'll work with them. They can hear what we're saying. They can shoot also, but we often do that. And then there's the community piece too of having I'll say U12s all the way to the U19s from that association that are on the ice. So it's again more of that community piece, which I know is important to to girls in sport, and also being able to see those next levels and kind of what you can be when you're a U12, U14 on the ice, and you see the U19 goalie, or you see the the goalie that was on the Alberta Winter Games, or different things like that, right? It's exciting, and you can strive for that, and you can see what you can be.
Well, I think that's great. We're into a bit of a wrap up here as well. We have 4 minutes left, and we do have a few shameless plugs as well to do to promote some of our other coaches series and what have you. But Heather, this was great. I'm really happy I got to do this one with you, to learn myself as well, or at least know if I do get a question at the office at Ringette Canada, at least I know an email address I can send the answers to.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people who are asking for it. If you go through the chat, you can pick it out. But thank you so much on behalf of Ringette Canada. The coaches who are listening to this now, we have over 50 coaches on this. We have another 200 who've signed up for this one. I mentioned to Heather before the call, we actually had quite a few coaches actually sign up for this evening, knowing they weren't able to attend because they wanted to at least get the recording. Because we're going to be sharing the recordings following this. We're also going to be sharing a follow-up survey. The follow-up survey may be coming tonight or tomorrow. We'll ask you for all your feedback. One of the reasons why we had goalies with Heather and Keely is because we've heard a lot in the coaching clinics that a lot of coaches want more in this area because they feel they don't have the skill set or the knowledge base on it. So we heard that. A lot of our other coach webinar series this fall that we're doing for the first time may not be as specific to the technical side of the game, but this is one piece that we wanted to do. So Heather, thank you for that. We actually have coaches, National Coaches Week coming up. It starts this weekend. It's over 10 days. Next week. We're going to be doing a lot of social media push on that. We are also having an online contest via Instagram starting Saturday, I've been told. Ringette Canada 1963, if you want to follow us there. We're trying to do as much as we can for free resources for coaches, and this is something that we thought was very good, and we'll be sharing it as well. If there's any suggestions of more coach webinar series, we are also looking at an officials webinar series. Please, in your feedback, every one of those will be reviewed. Please, in your feedback, give suggestions, good, bad, or otherwise, to this evening, but also to any other suggestions in the future. Heather, I'm just going to ask you for anything as a wrap up.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining, and I think if anything, you know, I'll probably be the lame goalie answer, but I think if anything, it's I think the fact that you're here on the webinar and you're looking for more information is a great thing. And so I think that you're kind of already taking those right steps, that I know you're probably looking for the magic bullet or the magic drill or whatnot. And I think just the fact that you've you know, attended this webinar, I see the requests for the U14 webinars too, that it's like, hey, there's some information there, and that it seems like you guys are all actively searching for that. And I think that's great to show your commitment, not only to goaltenders, but also to just coaching all athletes. So.
Yeah. And Heather, correction, something I said just a few seconds ago, the Coaching Association Canada and all sports, the National Coaching Week is actually starting this weekend, the 19th. It runs until the 27th for 10 days. There's a lot of free online coaching opportunities for coaches, coach initiation in sport. There's a number of, at coach.ca, if you log into the locker, there's a number of online resources, which usually the Coaching Association would charge. And for this period, there's a number of them which are discounted, or a lot of them which are free as well. We'll be doing some extra resources and sharing that on our social media as well, along with a lot of the provincial offices. Our next coach webinar series is next Tuesday. We'll actually be having the Coaching Association Canada and one of the provincial territorial coaching offices. It's actually going to be at New Brunswick, but they're going to be sharing information that everyone can learn. This is where some coaches can go to get to understand more about responsible coach movement, professional development. Maybe there's some local grants through your provincial government, coaching government organizations that you can access for coaching, especially as you start moving towards your coach pathways. So, but Heather, just for the sake of time, we're at the top of the hour. I really, really appreciate it. Bronwyn in the chat is coach.ca free NCCP e-learning. So that's in there as well. Thank you so much. Bronwyn is one of the examples of some of the great staff that we have throughout the country. But Heather, for me, on behalf of everyone, thank you so much for this evening. And I wish you great. Hopefully the next week we spend together at a rink is not as cold as Red Deer at the Canada Games. But totally. I look forward to catching up to you. And thanks again so much for everyone for joining us.
Thank you.